So you've had an incredible journey from growing up in Section 8 housing to becoming a prominent human rights lawyer and now having also run for Congress. What has motivated you to pursue a career in law and public service?
Well, I think part of it comes down to my immigrant experience as well. And, recognizing that Asian communities, South Asian communities don't really have the kind of history in the United States as other communities, good or bad. Due to anti-immigrant rhetoric and the bans on Asian immigration, our communities didn't really start immigrating here until the mid to late 19th because Black civil rights leaders ensured that Asians would have the right to immigrate with the Immigration. And so for me, understanding the power of the law and understanding how our communities are vehemently underrepresented was one of the big driving factors, especially in a post 9/11 America. I mean, I was a 19-year-old sophomore in college when 9/11 happened. And immediately I went from being, a random person to being the spokesperson for all people, Muslim and bearded. And, it was a very interesting, to say the least, experience. And when we look at the 20 plus years since then, I think in many respects we've gone backwards. The rise of white supremacist violence, of Islamophobic hate crimes, anti-Asian hate crimes. And so it's important to me that we have representation, that we are at the forefront of these conversations and making sure that our communities are represented, not just for ourselves, but for the future of this country, for the future generations of our communities as well.
That I think 9/11 has played a huge role in a lot of people's lives, a lot of South Asians' lives, as and in the United States, and you can really see how it has impacted you. Um, and so grateful for all of the work that you have done, really in terms of human rights over the lifetime of your work. Can you share a pivotal moment or experience from your childhood or early career that really shaped your commitment to serving humanity and advocating for justice?
I don't think I can ever say that I've become some champion for human rights. I mean, we can all do our best, but you'll never hear me say that. Look at me now. Look at how good I am. I think that's not appropriate for anyone to say about themselves. I certainly won't. What I will say is that in my formative years, I did experience firsthand the importance of representation. One story I often tell is, I think this must have been around 1990 or so. I was about 8 years old, and back in the day, before cell phones, before the internet, you had your answering machine that people would call and leave messages on. And I remember coming home one night, we were out at some, I don't know if we were at someone's home or where we were. I remember coming home and my father going to his office and checking the answering machine. And this just monsoon of Islamophobic bigotry came out of somebody who was, cursing at us because we were Muslim. And I recall the look of hurt in my father's eye. It wasn't for him. I realized this years later. It wasn't for him. It was that his son had to experience that at an age of 8. And you fast forward, I don't know, almost 30 years later, and the FBI shows up at my door because there's been a credible death threat made against me, and they need me to testify against the person who threatened to kill me. And so my mind flashed back to that 8-year-old kid, who was now, I was what, 30, 36, 37 at the time, uh, thinking to myself that, what has really changed in a generation and a half, 3 decades, what's really changed? And, there's a number of other events that I can tie and point to that all speak to this critical issue that representation matters. We need to be at the forefront. We need to lean into these conversations and establish our boundaries, not as a resistance, but as an affirmation of how we can engage in a positive and productive way. And growing up low income, recognizing the need of just basic necessities: food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, clothing. I'm not talking about extravagance. I'm talking about the basic necessities to get by, and recognizing that we don't live at a time of scarcity. We live at a time of excessive greed. And the role each of us need to play is to ensure that when it comes to these issues of human rights, whatever someone's faith or background or whatever differentiating factor is important, but still secondary to the basic humanity that every person has inherent within them. And I think it's that recognition from a very early age that has kind of been my driving force in the work that I do and that I continue to do.